Welcome to Paperweights, the podcast where two self-proclaimed gym rats and shooting enthusiasts delve into the world of literature with a sprinkle of humor. Although their biceps could crush a walnut, don't let that intimidate you. They also have a nerdy side. Mike and Brandon have a voracious appetite for reading, particularly in the fantasy genre, and they want to share their passion with you. So grab your protein shake and your favorite novel and join us for a humorous and insightful journey into the world of books with Paperweights.
Welcome back to the Paperweights. I'm your host, Brandon, and today I am joined again by
Emily. Hi, nice to see you all again.
welcome back, Emily. So
Thanks for
we
having me.
we had a whole lot in the book this week. So
Yes.
we're excited to get into that. Prior to that, it's Father's Day weekend as far as us recording here. So now would be a good time. Well, actually, you can go visit his site. He has the store shut down at the moment, turned off because he's on vacation. But you can go to www.mudcatwhiskers.com, who is Nick is gracious enough to sponsor us, and he sells beer care products and candles. So most of the scents that the beard care products are in come in the candle as well. So, you know, if you have a weekend where your boyfriend, husband, other aren't there and you miss the smell of their beard, just buy a candle with that scent and light it up, and then your entire house smells like it. And you don't even have to cuddle for any of it. So don't forget to use code paperweights at checkout and save yourself some money. All right. So this week, first of all, I've got to point out that I got a lot of reminders and vibes of several different things. So we got a nod to like Lord of the Rings this week with the way that the locket or the Horcrux, right now, the only Horcrux we had is the locket, and how that affects the mood of the people that are wearing it as it's touching them, and how they can connect to the Dark Lord um, while touching it. Also, I got a sense of X-Men. So kind of like Dumbledore and more so Dumbledore and Grindelwald are like Dumbledore would be Professor Xavier and Grindelwald would be um Magneto. And so they talk about how wizards and non-wizards and who's superior and who belongs in what place, etc. And then the other big vibe I get here in especially in this chapter, there were some in the other books um that I really get like a World War II vibe going on, kind of like sneaking through. I just get the idea of like sneaking through the cities of occupied France and dodging things. Um, my sorry, my speakers cut off, so I can't hear anything. Not that
I wasn't saying anything.
yeah, I know, but I wouldn't have been able to hear your response anyway. I got them connected again. I don't know why they disconnected, but anyway, they are back. And so, as I was saying, I get the real sense of like sneaking through and avoiding Nazis and the Gestapo as they're patrolling the streets of France and Poland in World War II. And then there was one bit where Ron was talking after Ron rejoined the group, and he was talking about the radio shows that he would listen into to get news of um, the war and everything. And that kind of reminded me there was there was a Netflix special, and it's based off of a book called All the Light in the World. And um, the guy that played House, he's in it, and um, it's about a radio show, or yeah, a radio show during World War II that would it was all coded, but it would give information to the Allies in France about the movements of uh, the Nazis during World War II. And so I really got a feeling of that stuff, and it's really cool to connect um, feelings and situations within books and go, oh, okay, did they intentionally draw from that? If not, they did a really good job, like something that happened in the real world, almost like, you know, they did a good job of kind of recreating that feeling of that. So
Yeah, I feel like so the author, I mean, she, like I said, she does have a degree in classics, but she was also she is British, so they are very aware of their history, especially with World War II. So that does make sense that she would draw from those influences as her story is moving more towards that vibe of, these people on the run from the big bad and everything is turning against them. It does make sense that she would draw from that.
my audio cut out again. This is sorry. Um, I apologize for these technical difficulties. All right, I think it should be back.
Can you hear me?
Yes, yes. All right, so you were saying they're really the British are really connected to history as far as World War II.
Yes, they're very aware of their history there. So it makes sense that the author would draw influences from that, especially as her story is moving, it is becoming much darker. And that is for England, that is a very dark time in their history. So it makes sense that she would pull from that, because I wouldn't have necessarily linked it like specifically to like Nazi occupied France, but you do get that very like occupied enemy territory war vibe. So that does make sense that she would draw from that.
Yeah. Yeah, I know Justin is a big history buff. I know Chris is a big history buff as well. Um, so it's real interesting. I'm not I don't research it and listen or read about history as much as they do, but I still enjoy it when I do come across it. So all right, well, we can dive into the details here. So we're picking up on chapter 11, the bribe. And what's funny is I think I mentioned it last book with Chris, where the titles of the chapters have become a little more not not explicit, like in book 4 it was like the first task, the second task. It's just like very like direct on, okay, this chapter is about this. And now, especially in the last 2 books, the chapter titles are kind of like, okay, what's that about, or why is that happening? And say something, I think my
Oh, okay. Is it on again?
yeah, I'm about to switch this. Hold on.
Okay.
All
Can
right,
you
say
hear me
something.
now?
Yes.
Good.
All right. Sorry, I had to take these out because they keep disconnecting and I don't want that to keep happening. So, all right. So, um, back to the chapter titles. They're less direct. And so I actually got through this entire chapter, and it wasn't until I was reading the second chapter I was like, what the hell was the bribe? And of course it refers to Mundungus giving the locket to um Umbridge. So, so it starts off with Lupin is brings in the Daily Prophet, um, as the kids are at 12 Grimmauld Place. He shows up, brings them the Prophet. Harry sees that his face is a wanted poster in the Prophet, and he's undesirable number one. Thickness is the minister, as you were deluding or hinting at in the previous episode. Uh, we have the Muggleborn registry going on, and mandatory Hogwarts attendance for any school age student or witch and wizard. And all of those are just kind of really control mechanisms, so they can try that Voldemort and the Death Eaters can really try to limit any subterfuge that may go on, and find the Order and find Harry.
Oh yeah, and those are also very, very reminiscent of Nazi Germany tactics. Those are the documenting your heritage, that you weren't Jewish, like having all the youth having to go into these programs to make sure that they were being brought up the right way, and all that. It's very reminiscent of Nazi Germany.
Yeah, and again, it brings me back to the X-Men as well. They had like the mutant registration laws that came up, and so, and of course X-Men pulls from uh, World War II and Nazi Germany as well. And of course, Magneto was of Polish Jewish descent, and so he grew up during World War II, and his parents were killed. So uh, Lupin then uh, offers himself to go with Harry. He's like, "I want to go with y'all. You don't have to tell me what y'all are doing, but I can provide protection. I'm a werewolf. Two, I'm a wizard. I taught defense against the dark arts, and you could use me." And of course, the kid's response was, "Oh, what about Tonks? And she's pregnant. Are you just gonna leave the child?" And like Harry took offense to that seriously.
And I agree. I agree with Harry. There's a lot of times when they're facing these big problems, you see the trio sort of immaturity because they're 17. That it's what they are. But in this moment, I was like, nope, Harry's absolutely right. And not to say that Lupin doesn't have a reason to be running scared. He absolutely does. But you married Tonks, she's pregnant, man up, go. You say you have all this great ability to protect, go protect your wife. Uh I actually thought Harry was absolutely right there.
Yeah, and I could kind of I 100% believe that Harry wants him to go back. And of course, Harry's response of insulting him, like really insulting him, was to really push him away. I've seen that in movies, or um, I don't recall seeing it specifically in real life, but sometimes when you need somebody to make a better decision, you have to hurt them to make them see the choice that they should make, right?
Yeah, it happens a lot in movies and TV shows. It's just kind of a quicker way of getting them to change their mind. I feel like a lot of times in real life, because most humans are compassionate, we wouldn't immediately go straight to insulting them if we needed them to realize that they were making a poor decision.
Right. But I also think Harry, in the back of his mind, Harry is probably like, man, if Lupin could come along with us, that would that would probably increase their power and their success rate more than a quarter, you know? So
Also, I feel like you see Harry and Ron and Hermione having this debate with themselves while Lupin's offering this because they're like, okay, Lupin does know what he's doing. Lupin's almost like a security blanket for him, in that it gives him the mindset of, we need an adult, and then them having to remember in the wizarding world they are adults.
Right.
So it's definitely there. Harry has to debate, okay, do we take the security blanket, or do we send Lupin back home to his wife, where she is definitely in danger because her father's a muggle born?
Yeah, and you brought up something just right before this bit that we were discussing about the immaturity of the trio, and that they're only 17. And later on we're going to see in a chapter when they're reading the excerpt, the long excerpt from the life and lives of Albus Dumbledore, where all this negativity and actions and early life things of Dumbledore come out. And they're discussing, well, was Dumbledore really bad and then he hid a lot of this, or did he actually have a change of heart? And one of them actually, I think Hermione says, well, that's when he was young. And Harry goes, he was our age, like our age right now.
And they
It's
are still children.
They
Like,
are, but they're seeing, like, they're connecting. I mean, at this age, this is the oldest they've been, right? So this is the most experienced they've been. And to them, they just became adults, considered adults in the wizarding world, right? So they're no longer children. But whenever they read that about Dumbledore, they're like, oh, well, he was young, he was a child. It's like, wait, no, he's 17, he's our age. He was an adult when that happened. And so they're having that conflicting thought of, he was young, but then also, wait, no, we're not young anymore. And then they're connecting the two together, then realizing life is a lot larger than their experience at this moment.
yes. But also, what I don't, and this is something I feel like people today struggle with when they see decisions that like our grandparents and our great grandparents made. It was a very different time. And because I think in Harry Potter canon at this point in the story, uh Voldemort is approximately like 77 years old. Dumbledore was around before Voldemort.
Yeah, Dumbledore's like 120, 130 or something.
Yes. So when he was 17, it was over a century before. Things were very different. They didn't necessarily have all the same rules in place or the same ideologies as they do now in the human world and also the wizarding world. And I feel like a lot of people have issues looking at things with those, like today's glasses looking back. But a lot of the things, unfortunately, that happened back then may have been more normal than people realize.
Yeah.
So it back then, we'll dive more into it when we get to that chapter, but Dumbledore may not have been as different from his peers at that point.
I mean, that's the whole, like, conversation. If you take modern day conversations, like, well, was this person in the 1800s evil? Like, this person was a slave owner, but were they evil? Like,
Yeah.
in modern day, yes. I mean, the concept of slavery in general is a terrible, evil thing. Um, but the mind shift from it to today, from then to today, is a huge shift. So, like, back then, it was, you know, I'm not making excuses for anybody being a slave owner, but a lot of them, it was okay. They have a status, and everything in their life and their family and everything is tied to maintaining that status quo, which unfortunately at times was owning slaves. And it wasn't looked at um the same as modern day, right?
Oh yeah. And I
So
mean, it is a very, it's happened to so many nationalities throughout the years. I mean, like you see now the rise of K-pop and how everybody love is getting really into specifically Korean culture, but also other Asian cultures. And 100 plus years ago, everyone was saying that like they were not wanted in the country. They were basically just good to build the railroads. Same with the Irish, and everyone thought that the Irish were terrible people. Now, every year we have massive St. Patrick's Day celebrations celebrating the Irish.
the Italians,
Yes, it's at some point, especially in American history, anything new was bad.
yes,
Anybody new was bad. Uh, and we had to make that shift. And I think because we're just now finding out really about more historic stuff. Well, by historically the century prior in the wizarding world. And so it's like, okay, well, back then, how much of this was considered normal? It's shocking to us now, but was this the status quo then?
right. Yeah, and we'll get more into that later on. So now we get to um, in this chapter. There is an excerpt in the Daily Prophet from Rita's book, which talks about Dumbledore's family moving to Godric's Hollow, um, and the suspicions that Ariana was a squib. And at this point, we don't know how Rita. I mean, we know Rita talked to Batilda Bagshot.
The back shot, yeah.
Okay. I was like, Bagshot doesn't, yeah, okay. Yeah, she talked to Batilda Bagshot and got all this information, but we don't know how. We're just like questioning, like, well, why would she give her all this information about Dumbledore? We find out later. So they have a suspicion that Ariana, his sister, Dumbledore's sister, is a squib. None of that is confirmed. Um, and then at the end of this chapter, Creature brings Mundungus back to the house. So he succeeded in his mission, and then, but Mundungus does not have the locket, and he says he was forced to give it up to Umbridge. He's basically blackmailed into giving it
Oh yeah.
to Umbridge so that
Very
she,
Umbridge move.
yes. And I brought this up in book 6 with Chris, because I think at the end of book 6, or somewhere in towards the end of book 6, Umbridge was mentioned as still working at the ministry, and I was just like, why is she work like she did some shady stuff, and
She's apparently um, connected to a lot of pureblood families, and she had a lot of the purebloods' favor. Uh, so when that comes to government, a lot of things are excused, unfortunately.
and this was before Voldemort even really had control of it. And now that Voldemort has control of it, and so book 5, I don't think Umbridge really was the same evil as Voldemort. She was just
Oh,
a
she was a
different
very
evil.
different evil in book 5, and I think that's what's so startling because we've spent 4 books now getting to know Voldemort's evil, and we're now hit with Umbridge, and we're like, oh, she is just horrible.
Yeah. And so we find out with the news of the ministry being taken over that Scrimgeour was actually tortured to death. Um, and it was reported that he was asked all sorts of questions about Harry, and he did not give up any information, which I remembered back to 2 conversations where Scrimgeour was trying to get information about Dumbledore from Harry, and Harry told him nothing. And like both of those conversations, the end of the conversation, Harry said, "No, I'm Dumbledore's man through and through." And I kind of was like, "Hey, Scrim wasn't that terrible of a guy." You know,
No, it's
I think he was doing things for the greater good.
For the greater good, but he didn't know what the greater good was.
Right. He was trying to figure that out. He's like, I want information about Dumbledore so I can try to help be good, but also Harry, Dumbledore, nobody knows who they can trust. So it's like, and if you don't know who, that's part of the success of evil, right? If evil can make good not be able to know who to trust, then evil is going to win.
Yes.
Because when you stop the dissemination of information, you're you're keeping people from congregating, you're keeping plans from happening, and alliances from being formed. And we saw that in book 5, and we see that in this book with
When they're back at
Hogwarts.
Hogwarts, yeah.
Yeah, which we're going to learn more about Snape in the chapters to come, not in this section.
But yes, this does bring us back to our previous conversation in that Mundungus Fletcher is a very just conniving coward. And you see that so much, and I don't think we really see him too much more in the book, but he's very skeezy, he is very cowardly. But apparently very good at evading capture, as it took Creature 3 days to find him.
Yeah. All right. So let's move on to the next chapter. And you can bring up anything throughout the conversation if there's any points you wanted to make. Magic is Might, chapter 12. This starts off with Harry and the gang noticing just odd people, like people just walking up to where 12 Grimmauld Place should be and just like looking and like hoping to glance something, almost like people standing out in cornfields trying to get glimpses of UFOs. Like
Yeah. And they've pretty quickly deduced that they may not be Death Eaters, but they're there under Death Eater command.
oh yeah, oh yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if they are under the Imperious Curse, because they have that like look, like they don't look happy. They're just like standing there like they're being forced to, like, ugh, I gotta do this.
Kind of. And I don't know if we ever fully find that out, but that would make a lot of sense, because I think at this point they know that some of the higher up Death Eaters are more recognizable, so it makes sense to send people that the trio have never seen before. And the only way that they could ensure that they get there and stand there all day is under the Imperious Curse.
Yeah. They learn that Snape is now the headmaster at Hogwarts. And then Hermione is like, oh, there's a portrait of Phineas Black that I can go take off the wall and use that to spy on Snape. Or rather, she her first thought is she's going to take it off the wall because Snape's going to spy on them, because he knows that it can go in between the two houses. Later on, Hermione decides to use this to their advantage, and with hilarity of painting a blindfold on Phineas Black,
which he absolutely does not appreciate.
No, he does not. He's like, he refused to talk at first, but then was like, I guess I really do like the conversation.
But yes, at this point they have been doing reconnaissance at the entry to the Ministry for several weeks now. I feel like that is one thing I feel especially in these first few chapters, we're not fully aware of all the time jumps that happen.
Right.
But this time they do say they have been doing reconnaissance for like 4 weeks now. So we know we do have a little bit, about a month of a time jump from the last chapter.
Yeah, and speaking of time and time jumps, Rowling does this in her books where she doesn't like a lot of times she doesn't explicitly state, oh, in this many days or weeks have passed. It's usually by the holidays. Like she'll say, all right, and now uh Halloween is here or uh Christmas is here. So you know, like, oh, well, that much of the school year has passed.
Yep. And random little side note, that is also, I don't know if you've played Hogwarts Legacy.
Yes, I haven't beat it, but
Oh yeah. But so we also see Phineas Black as the headmaster during that time of
yes.
Hogwarts Legacy. But they do time jumps the same way. Like you'll finish a mission and your character will go to sleep and you'll wake up like, oh, it is now snow on the ground. I guess we're at winter time. Like there's not they apparently that is consistent throughout the Harry Potter world. Of there's like, we're not gonna explain the time jumps to you.
I don't think I've made it that far into the main missions. Um, so I've met the last main mission I did. It was after I met the people in the room. The
Oh, the map room.
Yeah, and then I went to in the tower in the north,
Okay.
and
So you're still
that's
very early in the game.
yeah, that's where I stopped. But I've played like 20 something hours of this game. I've just been like running around because I wanted to do a lot of stuff, and I was like, well, how do I do this? How do I get this? And then I'm trying to figure it out. And it's like, oh, wait, I can't do that yet because I haven't gone far enough into the main mission to be able to access this thing. So like harvesting like the puff skeins or whatever.
Hmm.
Like I can't do that yet because I haven't hit that main mission that gives you the access to do that thing. Like
You know, that one, because there are several video games where you can go around and just do side quests for forever. This one, you do kind of have to balance main missions with side quests in order to progress your abilities.
yeah, I need to get back to it. It's funny because I played like 10 to 15 hours when I first bought it. And then that was beginning of last year, I think. And then I started playing it right around when I was discussing book two or something. And I played it for like another 15 hours. And then I haven't played it since then. But I do that with video games. So, but it's a fun game. I
But
need to get back
apparently,
to it.
yes, that is the Harry Potter universal language of, yeah, we're not going to explain the time jumps. It's just you wake up and it's a new time.
Yeah. So they do decide to after their reconnaissance at the ministry, they decide to act. They're going to they make polyjuice potions and then basically knock out or redirect those people that they're acting as. Before they get into there, so the night before they decide to go in, Harry has a dream or a vision from Voldemort searching for Grigorovich. Um, I can't remember. Is this the vision where he actually goes into his mind or no? So he doesn't have.
This isn't this the vision where he sees um
Don't name it.
Voldemort killing the people who live where Grigorovich used to live?
It might be. Yeah, don't think he's. I don't think at this point he pulled the memory out of somebody stealing something from him yet.
No, no. So no, this is the vision. The vision that Harry sees is the one where he's hunting down Grigorovich. He goes to, I guess, a place where Grigorovich once lived, and there's a family living there now who's saying he's not here. He moved. He doesn't exist here, and Voldemort does not appreciate that answer, and kills them all.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, and so he has that vision. So now he connects that he's searching for wand maker. Like he's really trying to find this wand maker. Like it's not just a name that came up. Uh they get into the ministry and we really start to see how much the ministry has changed, like a changing of the guard, if you will. The statue that was in the middle that used to have wizards and I think a goblin
Yeah,
maybe
it was
was there.
just the like a magic. It was solid gold, wizards, wizard kind, different creatures,
And
trying to show
now
inclusivity.
and now it's just a witch and a wizard on a mound of muggles. Um, and the inscription on it says magic is might. And then we learned that blood status is being used to scare and threaten people. So the person that Ron is impersonating, his wife is down in the dungeons or whatever, and her blood status is being questioned. And somebody, I forget who it was, but he sees him and goes, "Hey, why don't you go upstairs?" Was it Yaxley? He sees and tells him that he needs to go up,
Yes, it is
and
Yax.
it's raining in Yaxley's office. And he's like, "Go up and try to get rid of that rain, or there might be more questions about your wife's blood status."
Yeah.
And so now Ron is like, "Oh God, this poor woman's fate is resting on my ability to handle jinxes. This is that's a lot of pressure."
Yes. And that does lead me to believe that because Harry says, well, we could be doing reconnaissance for weeks more and we won't learn anything more. I'm like, you may have learned who to pick better. Because he does like they don't know who Harry is, which luckily for them winds up being Runcorn, a person who actually has a pretty high status at the ministry. Um, Cattermole is going through all kinds of a crisis right now. And the only one that they actually kind of got right intentionally was Hermione being Mafalda Hopkirk. Uh, but that this is one of those times where I'm like, y'all might have wanted to plan a little longer.
Yeah. It's like, how much planning do you want to do on before you go on this mission? Nah, let's just get into it and I'll figure it out as we go.
Yes. But yes, this is not the first time we've heard of Mafalda Hopkirk. Um, we hear about her a couple of times throughout the series. She's at the trial for Harry in book 5 for the use of underage magic. She's also the one who sends him the letter after he saves Dudley from the Dementors, expelling him from Hogwarts.
Oh yeah,
She's
that's
the
right.
one who signs that. So we hear that name pop up a few times in the series before we actually get to see her.
Yeah, I totally missed that. I'm glad you pointed that out.
Yeah.
It's good. Um, that just is reminding me of other book series where I'm like rereading some things and I'm picking up things. I don't know how much you know about Brandon Sanderson,
Mhm.
but his big thing, so he has multiple different series, and by themselves they're great and you can read them and understand what's going on. There are events, there are some events in some of them that would almost feel like a Deus Ex Machina type situation, um, if you were to only read that series by itself. However, if you read some of the other works, they're all part of this bigger cosmere. Um, and so you'll see influences from different things, and there's a whole subplot that's like going on behind all of these different stories that's like something's happening and influencing all these different things. And so, like I told you earlier, this morning I got up early and I finished the last 40 pages of one of these books, and it had some of those connections where I went, oh, oh, well, there we go. And so it's just the connections are really cool whenever you do see them. And you're not going to catch a lot of that stuff on your first read,
Yeah.
but rereading it, the joys of rereading is you're understanding more and you're catching more of, oh, okay, this person actually did exist before here, but they didn't have a big role.
Yes.
So did you do? Oh, and some people in the ministry, they're actually, with the blood status going on, they're actually really, they're hoping for the downfall of others so that they can get the jobs that they want. And Harry uses this to his advantage
Yeah, I will
in
say
the
in
next
this
chapter.
chapter, we see some of the most quick thinking we've ever seen from Harry. Because he doesn't know who he is and why people should be afraid of him, but he's going to use that to his advantage for this mission. But no, they very quickly they're like, okay, well, how are we going to find Umbridge? Then they very quickly stumble upon Umbridge.
Like, the elevator door just opens up and it's like, oh, hey. And she's like, Mafalda, I was looking for you. We got to go downstairs.
Yep.
And Harry's like, oh, I'm coming. I guess I'm coming too. And then she's like, Runcorn, aren't you getting off here? Like, isn't this your stop? Oh shit. So now
Yep.
they're all three of them are separated. Like the number one rule of Dungeons and Dragons is don't separate the party. And
Now
so
they are all very separated, and with once again, this is 1998 in the wizarding world. There's no methods of communication open to them.
yes, they should have a magic spell that is like message, and you just send a
I'm sure by
message.
now in the Harry Potter universe they have created one.
Yeah. Um.
But then unfortunately, Runcorn gets off the elevator and we do get some confirmation of something that people may have been holding out a little bit of hope. But he walks through and he sees Moody's eye in the door.
Oh yeah.
So we do get sort of that final confirmation of Moody's death and that the ministry has covered it up. And then we get Harry realizing he can't leave it there. He has to take it, and he can't let Umbridge have it.
Yeah. Well, he wanted to. He was going to Umbridge's office to search for stuff anyway, right?
Yeah,
And it was all stuck on the outside. But yeah, as he went in, no, it was when he left
it
the
was when he
office.
left.
Yeah, it was when he left the office that he took it off and went away. Um, but yeah, so
So yes, he goes
that's
in the office. He tears it apart. No sign of the locket. We have learned that Umbridge has not updated her decorating skills from her Hogwarts days in Book 5. It's everything's still pink. There's still the cat plates,
and
which were always creepy to me.
this is in the Muggle. This is next chapter, right?
No, we're in. So he steals the eye from Dolores's door, and but before he goes in, he's looking for the locket in there.
Yeah, this happens in the next chapter. The Muggleborn Registration
Oh
Commission.
yes.
Yeah, yeah. Sorry, I'm just trying to.
Oh yeah. So yes, we have moved on because it's just them sort of trying to figure out where they are in the ministry. Oh, and so when we wait, are we still in that? Okay,
Yeah,
so no. Yeah, so in Muggleborn registration.
yeah.
Yes. So Hermione's down in the interrogation rooms with Umbridge.
Harry's on the
Harry's
upper
ransacking her
floor.
office. But Harry also does find out a very vital piece of information while ransacking the office. He finds some of the files on people,
Yes,
including
specifically
Arthur's.
Arthur Weasley. Yeah.
Yes. And he finds that he's technically been cleared because he's a pureblood, even though they don't like him, but that his every move and every word is being monitored.
Yes. Everything. He's being watched. And Ron, again, not Ron, Harry, quick thinking in the elevator at the end of this chapter, just Runcorn was just like, Arthur, you're being watched. And Arthur's like, what?
Yes. And so he's able to sort of give a warning without giving himself away.
Yeah.
Which we don't see too much of that quick thinking from Harry all the time, but I feel like he really used it to his advantage in this chapter.
Yeah, that's more of a Hermione thing.
Yes.
Yeah. So Ron also succeeds in removing the rain. The Harry uses the decoy detonators to get into the office. Um, he is interrupted as Pius walks in to the office, and then that he uses that as the motivation to leave the office. But like you said, before he leaves the office, he reads that entire file on Arthur, leaves the office, takes the eye, which there was a telescopic lens connected to the door into the eye. So that's how she could see outside the door. And then the elevator ride, he's on the elevator and Arthur Weasley gets on. Percy or Ron gets on too, disguised, and then Percy gets on and doesn't seem to even notice that his dad was on the elevator with him. Um,
No, he notices
Arthur
eventually.
notices.
And Percy eventually notices because he immediately gets off the elevator.
Okay, I thought he just got off because that was the floor he was getting off on.
No, there's everyone's speculating at this point because remember, Percy didn't come to the wedding. Percy hasn't really shown up too much on the Weasley side. And there's sort of like a fan theory because we see a lot in the previous books when Percy is doing things for the minister at the time, Fudge, and then moves into Scridgemore, that he's not being called Weasley. He's being called by a different sort of W name. Now we think, okay, maybe it's just he doesn't want to bother to remember the name, but why would he not remember the name? The Weasleys are a prominent pureblood family. They are in the Sacred 28. It's a well-known name. There's another Weasley that works at the ministry. Why is he not remembering his name? And so there's the sort of fan theory that Percy did not give his real name. Percy gave a fake name to not be connected to the Weasleys and to some people think to move up the ranks on his own, but other people think it's to disconnect him from his family. So that's not confirmed, but it is sort of a fan theory going on.
Okay. Yeah, Fudge always called him Weatherby.
Yeah.
Yeah, starting in what, book 4?
Yes. And so Percy just pops up in random ministry related matters. He doesn't show up as much, and so you could see how that could be a point of contention between him and Arthur if he pretty much renounced the Weasley name when he started his professional career to dissociate himself from them. And why
Okay.
Arthur would not try to reach out and start talking to him when he got on the elevator.
That would make sense. So before we get into Harry going into the courtroom, early on, I wanted to point out in this chapter. So Harry, as Runcorn, who is tall, is like really tall, and he's walking around a lot with underneath the invisibility cloak, and it states here. So we know as early as last book or book 5 for sure that all 3 of the kids, Ron, Harry, and Hermione, successfully and easily were hidden under this invisibility cloak. But when it's on Runcorn, it's all of a sudden barely long enough to hide his feet.
So, but also they say it in the chapter before this, they flat out say the cloak's not big enough to hide all three of us anymore. That's why Hermione has to disapparate them twice. She has to first disapparate Ron to the entrance to the ministry, and then she has to go back for Harry and bring Harry. So I feel like there was not a consistency on how the cloak worked, but it seems like as of this book, they're sticking with it is not big enough for all three of them.
It reminds me of the was it the fox and the chickens in the boat crossing the river? There's like a farmer and he's got some foxes and chickens and the farm's on fire and has to get them all across the boat, but they can't all fit in the boat at one time. So how do you um which ones do you have to put in the boat together to ensure you can't leave a fox and a chicken
On the
um
shore while you
on
go
the
back for
shore,
one.
but you can't leave them in the boat alone either. So I forget the exact
Yeah. Well, no,
problem,
it
but
makes sense, but so I think that they are sticking with for this book at least. The cloak is not big enough for all three of them. It does not have the ability to magically expand. Uh, it is because remember they're 17. They're still pretty slight. Um, they're not fully grown into their physiques yet, so two of them they can manage. Uh, especially since Hermione is supposed to be fairly petite.
yeah.
But a fully grown over 6 foot man, nope.
uh to see Mr. Weasley does so Ron was having trouble with the fixing the office, but his dad tells him in the elevators like, oh, did you try the Meteolo Jinx Recanto? And it's like, it worked for Bletchley. And Ron's like, oh, okay, well, let me go try that one. Um, and then we get Harry busting in to the trial room. And it's one of the cool things that was described here was this cat that is a Patronus cat that was walking back and forth in front of the desk and the table where the judges were sitting, and that was to protect them from the effects of the Dementors that were in there. And they're questioning Mrs. Cattermole, and Harry, or I forget who points out the no, Harry was under the cloak at that point, right? He's just
Yes,
watching.
Harry's under the cloak at the point. Hermione um hasn't noticed it. Harry's able to feel it.
The
He's able
the the locket.
yeah, he's able to sense that the locket is there.
So somehow it comes out, and I forget how. Um, let's see who.
Oh, so Harry um
No, Hermione notices it.
oh
Um,
yeah, so Hermione notices it and she's like, "Oh, well
that's a
that's pretty."
pretty. Yeah, and she goes, "Oh, this, yeah, it's a family heirloom. The S stands for Selwyn. I'm related to the Selwyn." So she's like upselling her blood status as a pure blood, and knowing damn well the S stands for Slytherin.
Or I don't think she knows fully what the S stands for. Um, but yes, because the Selwyns are a member of the Sacred 28. So if you're able to prove that you're related or like upsell that you're related to one of these Sacred 28 families, then usually you're safe. So she's in a way like because we don't know Dolores Umbridge's parentage. People may have found out, but it's not explicitly stated if she's a I don't know if she's a pureblood or if she's a half-blood or what, but because it is Huh. It is interesting. So many of these people that we see in like Dumbledore, Snape, Voldemort, they all have these sort of opinions about blood purity, and they are all half-bloods themselves.
Right.
So it's interesting to see. I mean, again, it's once again that's sort of a Hitler-esque thing, and that Hitler was obsessed with blonde hair, blue eyes, tall, statuesque, Aryan race type things, and he was this short, brown-haired guy.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that fits.
Yeah.
But Harry at this point can't stand Umbridge any longer. And so from underneath the cloak, blows his cover, casts Stupefy on her. Yaxley is about to do something, and he casts Stupefy on him. And then they replace the locket with a fake. So Hermione she creates a magical fake
Yeah.
replica, leaves it on her, just because if she woke up and she didn't have it, then it would be suspicious on her part. And then they take Mrs. Cattermole out, and they're escaping. And then they go out, and there's a whole bunch of mudbloods, if you will, um, who are waiting around down in the ministry, awaiting their trials for blood status, etc. And Harry's like, as Runcorn, which people were like confused, like, why is he doing this? And he's like, he passes by some other ministry workers, and gives excuses, and then they start ushering all of them out and telling them, hey, go back, get your families, and go into hiding.
Yeah, run far, run fast. But also there these ministry officials that he's having to tell to stop, uh like because they're cutting off the flu, they're not letting people in or out of the ministry. He's having to realize, okay, I have some sort of power. He tells them to stop. He gets these people out because they've realized something's going on, because someone noticed that the eye was missing from Umbridge's door.
Yeah.
So we have that of, oh, this action, while noble, may have bitten them in the butt.
Yes. But good on them.
Yeah.
They disapparate themselves and go to Grimmauld Place,
Where unfortunately Yaxley is holding on to them and finds out where they are.
Yes. And that brings us to chapter 14, the thief.
Yes. And so Harry wakes up, and he is now in a forest, not where he was expecting to be. He thought they were going home, but then they see that Ron is very injured from the quick disapparitions. So
Yeah, so right before, as we're getting to that disapparating, like, I really didn't know what was going on at the end. So it's like, so I know that she was trying to disapparate them, and just the whole description at the end of that chapter, and I'll just read it here. Darkness engulfed them, along with the sensation of compressing bands, but something was wrong. Hermione's hands seemed to be sliding out of his grip. He wondered whether he was going to suffocate. He could not breathe or see, and the only solid things in the world were Ron's arm and Hermione's fingers, which were slowly slipping away. And then he saw the door of number 12 Grimmauld Place with its serpent door knocker, but before he could draw breath, there was a scream and a flash of purple light. Hermione's hand was suddenly vice-like upon his, and everything went dark. So it was a very confusing, it was confusing for Harry.
yes.
And so here we're in Harry's point of view, and so it's like, wait, what? But yeah, I had no clue like what exactly was happening there. And it took Hermione explaining it later on to go, oh, okay.
Yes. But no, so from what I remember from book 5, Ron and Harry are not gifted at this point of apparating and disapparating. That's why Hermione tends to do the action and they side along with her. But in the 5th book, they do explain the dangers of apparition, in that you have to be very intent about where you're going.
That was
Otherwise,
book
you could leave a
6.
part of yourself. It's book 6? Okay, sorry, book
Yeah.
6. But they're like, you have to be very intentional about where you're going. Otherwise, you could leave a bit of yourself behind. And they kind of joke and they're like, oh, okay, well, that's ridiculous. How could you leave a bit of yourself behind? And so at first, the first apparition, they're going to Grimmauld Place. And that's when we find out in Hermione's explanation, that's why Harry felt that Hermione's grip was slipping away, because Yaxley was pulling on her. And she accidentally lets him inside the Fidelis charm, so he now has access to 12 Grimmauld Place and theoretically could get others into 12 Grimmauld Place. So she quickly, before they've settled in from that apparition, apparates them out to the forest where the Quidditch World Cup was held. And through that, Ron gets splinched, which is leaving a bit of yourself behind. He has this gaping wound where the flesh has just been like carved out and left behind on the doorstep.
Yeah, it described his insides were spilling out.
Yes. So it's something that they kind of are joking about in the 6th book of, oh, how can you leave a piece of yourself behind or whatever? And then they say like, oh, that's how that happens. They're
that's
luckily
also
able
how
to get him recovered, but
so Ron actually failed his apparition test because like he almost succeeded. He almost passed it, but he failed because half of his eyebrow was splinched in book 6, which was like that was a laughing joke about that
yes.
to me. It's like, oh, what about why half an eyebrow? Why did they fail me on that? Well,
It could lead to bigger problems. But so now we see that splinching is a very serious thing, or can be a very serious thing. They're luckily, because Hermione is an overpacker, able to get him healed. She has the correct medical treatments to fix a splinching injury. And then Harry's like, well, where are we? Why did we wind up here? He gets the explanation. And I believe, I don't know what the name of the forest is that they're in, but it's where the Quidditch World Cup was.
Yeah, the oh yeah, I don't remember. I was gonna say
eventually they
Tottenham.
wind up in different places, but right now it's just, I think, just kind of a forest.
Yeah, I was gonna say the Tottenham, but that was something different.
That was the road that they first apparated to after
Yeah.
the wedding.
Yeah, so in this field, they're trying to, I don't think they name it in this.
Yeah, I think they just say it's where the World Cup was.
Yeah. Hermione does all these, they get the tent that they used in book 4 at the Quidditch World Cup because whatever his name left it to them. He
But
didn't.
he didn't want it.
Yeah, he didn't want it, so the Weasleys got to keep it, and Hermione packed it for them. And it comes in handy. They set it up in the field, and Hermione does 7 or a million different protection charms on the field and in the tent. And inside, they attempt to open the locket, and they fail. They cannot do so. And so Harry just decides to wear it around his neck and touching against his skin. And he mentions it's very cold to the touch. And
It is very, I mean, when you think about it, the act of making it and who it's made by, it just contains evil.
yes. And so they decide they do decide that they're going to take turns holding it, because they notice it starts to affect their mood. Ron, severely so.
Yeah,
apparently.
he's apparently particularly susceptible to the effects of the Horcrux. Whereas for Harry, it seems to strengthen that mental link he has with Voldemort, which is also not good.
No.
Hermione seems to be the least affected by it, but in my opinion, Hermione is the most centered in herself and the most confident in her abilities. So that makes sense of why she would probably be able to fight its effects a little bit longer than them. But no, Ron is apparently very susceptible to the locket.
Yes. Then so they take turns watching uh, outside the tent. Harry then dozes off while he's on his watch. And this is where he dreams of Voldemort stealing Grigorovich's memories, which is he's so Voldemort is asking Grigorovich for something. And he's like, I don't have it. I haven't had it. Somebody stole it from me. Um, or he may not even mention that somebody stole it from him, but he's definitely saying he does not have it. At which
Oh
point,
no, he mentions that someone stole it from him.
okay, and at which point, but he won't tell him who. And Voldemort pulls the memory out, and he sees a blonde haired youth in a window. Could I was gonna say Bran Stark, but Bran has brown hair, so it may this came before. This
Yes.
this book came. Did it? No, no. This
Um,
book came after.
it came after, yes, by like a couple of years.
Yeah.
But we do have to remember that like the final, like the ending to this book was one of the first things that the author wrote. So all
She.
the other books were leading up to this ending.
Oh, really?
Yes, the end of book 7, I believe, I don't know if it was shortly after the first or the second book, but that was one of the first things that she wrote. She was like, this is where I wanted to end up. So everything else was leading to this point.
Huh. That's cool. Yeah, and Game of Thrones was published and released in 1996.
And I believe that this book was what? I remember book 6 was 2006. So this book would have been 2008-ish, 2009.
Let's see what I thought this was. That's the movie, 2010.
Yeah.
This is 2007.
Oh, okay, 2007.
Yeah.
Um,
So with that, did she know Horcruxes were going to be a thing long before she wrote book 1?
I don't know exactly. I
Because
don't
it
know exactly
really.
what devices she knew she was going to use, but I know that she wrote. I'm pretty sure she wrote the last chapter. I don't think it was the epilogue. I think it was the last chapter. She at least had outlined it. Like she knew that this is how she wanted it to go.
Okay.
She was like, this is how I want the ending to be. So every decision that she was making in most of the books was how to get to this ending.
Gotcha. I don't know.
And
'Cause I was
that's
about
another
to
thing
say if she knew Horcruxes were a thing and she didn't mention it until book 6, then that was kind of crappy because it really does seem like just like, oh, I need this device and I didn't introduce it yet. I guess I'll introduce it in book 6.
she introduces it but doesn't in book 2, in that there is a thing that can hold a piece of Voldemort's soul that can be used to sort of revive him,
Yeah, I
but she
think that
doesn't
was
name it.
just retconned as a Horcrux.
Yes, but so she doesn't name it. And so no, I don't think that she knew exactly how she was going to get there, but every decision that we see leads to that point.
Yeah, I'll say, in book 2, the Tom Riddle that was in a diary has no clue does not know any of the history between when he got put in the diary and now. Like, I he doesn't know about the First War. He doesn't know that Harry Potter survived whatever. He's just intent on becoming alive again.
Well, so because we do find out in these upcoming chapters that like Voldemort was in the orphanage, he goes to Hogwarts, he graduates, he works at Borgin and Burke's for a little while. He tries to get a job at Hogwarts, and he eventually goes off to Albania. And they know that he created 5 of his Horcruxes before going to Albania. So, and especially since he was asking about Horcruxes as a student at Hogwarts, it makes sense that he would make one while he was at Hogwarts and put that piece of his soul into something that he had that was important to him, which would have been his school diary. So that piece of his soul had not experienced anything else.
Right.
So that does make sense of why he's like, nope, I am. He appears in his school robes. He knows pretty much just what is Hogwarts. So that also does have the interesting thought of, okay, that Voldemort's soul is frozen in time at the point of when he makes the Horcrux.
Right.
Huh,
Unless it's a, I was going to say unless it was a living object, but
oh yeah,
we don't know if there's living objects yet.
But we do know that the diary was one. We do
Dumbledore
have
does
the very
suspect
solid
the
suggestion that the ring that Dumbledore was wearing on his dead hand is one.
Dumbledore suggested that Nagini was one.
But yes, makes sense. He always keeps the snake with him. The snake can fight its own battles. So, in a sense, if we do know that, if that is true, a Horcrux can be placed in something that is alive because it's in the snake. If this is true, we don't have absolute confirmation on that.
Yeah.
But they're still, as they believe that there are 7 Horcruxes, and they think the snake is one, they have these other 3. There's still 3 that they're missing, and 3 that they don't know where to start looking for.
Oh yeah, absolutely. They're like, I have no clue. It's like playing those old school RPG games where there's no markers on the map for anything. You just have to really like, there's no like quest logbook either. You just like talk to somebody and they tell you something, and it's like, yeah, there was something up in the north area, and you got to go up there and find it where it's at, and then hopefully complete whatever, and then just go back and bring it to you. It doesn't go, hey, you've collected what you need, now go back and talk to this person. It's the hard mode of RPGs.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so we're nearing the end of this chapter. Harry has the vision of him finding Grigorovich.
killing him.
I believe that Grigorovich is killed.
Yes.
By Voldemort. And then so after that we do go into chapter 15.
Yep, the Goblin's Revenge. And this one was, I thought this chapter was pretty cool because they start to talk about, all right, what are our next steps? Like, we've got the locket. We know we need to find something to destroy the locket, and we need to find the other Horcruxes.
Yes.
And so
and at this point, the only thing that they know destroys Horcruxes is basilisk venom.
Right.
They don't know of any other way at this point.
No, they do not. And the chapter starts off with a very nice gesture by Harry. He buries Moody's eye to give him a proper burial. And then they move the camp. And so they move the camp every few weeks, I think.
Once again, they don't give us great times.
Right. They don't, but
it could be every couple of days. It could be every couple of weeks. It makes sense to not stay put in one spot for too long.
Right. You get a sense though that they kind of familiarize themselves with the area a little bit and venture out and back in each spot that they do stay.
Yes, and they
Um,
are trying now to pick their locations with somewhat of a proximity to people because they have realized that Ron with the locket while hungry is not a good combination. So they're trying to make sure, and that's something that they point out. I don't know if it's this chapter or the one before, that days where they have food are much brighter days. Like there's more hope on those days. So we see that there are several days where they're probably going completely without food. So as they're moving, they're trying to be like, okay, well, if we go near this farm, we might be able to get some eggs or something like that, because they realized going towards a wizarding village was a bad idea, as there were more people that could spot them.
yeah, and I will note Hermione apparently broke into the farm's house to steal bread.
Yes, Hermione's morals are getting a little looser at this point.
Like she did say she left money, but like I could see stealing eggs or chickens as being an easier thing to do, but most people think keep the bread inside the house.
Yeah, yeah. Once again, this is the 90s in the countryside in England. The doors probably aren't locked.
Yeah.
So
It,
she was probably able to just like slip in the night, grab the bread, leave a little bit of money.
and again, I'm reminded this time of I don't know if you watched the movie All Quiet on the was it All Quiet on the Western Front? That's a book, and I think they made it into a movie. There's a recent World War II movie that was all in either French or German, and it followed these friends that had joined up in the military. They were Frenchmen, and they joined in the World War II. But anyway, there's a scene there when they're in the French countryside looking for food, and they found a farm where they go in and they jump the fence and steal eggs all the time. But
Isn't that I only because Alex watched it relatively recently. I feel like there's a scene very similar to that in Band of Brothers where they're trying to communicate with the people in France to that they want to trade for some of their eggs. Like they have like chocolate or something and they're trying to trade it for some eggs or
yeah,
um
they probably do that too. I mean,
I feel
it's
like that's a
common.
pretty
It's a
common
common thing.
theme
Yeah.
with the soldiers in World War II. Can
Yeah.
I find better food than these rations?
Yeah. Yeah. All Quiet on the Western Front is the name of that movie I was thinking of. Um, but yeah, they were just like soldiers. They might have been German soldiers. But maybe not. But anyway, they were some type of soldiers, and they saw French women, and when they're stationed in France, and they're trying to, whatever. That's the whole movie. The whole movie is about the soldiers finding French women. No, no, I'm just kidding. It's not. It's about the war.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So the next back to the story. The next camp that they're at, Harry actually ventures out to go find food in the town. Uh, but the town he goes to, there's Dementors everywhere, and they're like the Muggles. They can't see the Dementors, so they don't know it's there. But they're just like just walking around with this big sense of dread on them. And Harry's like, "Man, I need to help these people," and he tries to cast a Patronus, but he can't. And so when he goes back to the camp, Hermione surmises that the locket is the thing that's preventing him from doing so, because just the clash between it being a dark art and something that's against the dark art.
Yeah, it's almost acting as a sort of a block for like good memories. Like they can't bring forward the light within them with this thing blocking it. And Ron is still complaining about food at this point.
Yes.
which we see, and you think when you read through it as a teenager or a young adult, you're like, oh, that's so childish. It's really not. Food is one of the basic things you need, especially in a survival situation. So if you're going days on end with a handful of mushrooms or something like that, like it's bound to make you very irritable, very uh easy to manipulate, which is another war tactic of if you keep them hungry, they will listen to you sort
Yes.
of vibe.
Yeah. And so they discuss their next destination, and the three that are brought up um, four that are brought up are Albania, and the reason being is because Voldemort went there late in life. Um, when he was exiled, that's where Voldemort went. Borgin and Berks, because that's where he had worked when he completed school. Hogwarts, because he had never gotten back in, and that's where he went to school. And then the orphanage, and it burned down. So they rule these out. They were brought up, but then they rule them out.
Yeah.
So the orphanage was ruled out because they actually went and visited it, and it was burned down. And then they said, "Oh, it wasn't grand enough to Voldemort to actually keep something there. Like it was not
It
a
signified such a dark, like even for Voldemort, such a dark time for him. So why would he want to keep something important there?
yes. I can't remember. I didn't go. I meant to go back and look it up. I couldn't remember why they ruled out Borgin and Burks.
They rule out Borgin and Burks because they feel that there's no way that Borgin and Burke would have been able to miss him hiding a Horcrux there. They were experts in dark artifacts. They would have
Oh, right.
known something was up with this.
They should
So,
have known something was up with Voldemort himself.
well, they were focused on other things. But if there had just been an object lying around Borgin and Burke's for years, they would have been able to figure out, hey, something's not right with that. Like, even by our standards.
It showed up around the time Voldemort was here.
Plus, keeping something in a shop, there's always the likelihood it could be sold. And then Voldemort himself would not know where it is.
True.
So that's not good.
Except if you put on he could have put a jinx or a hex on it that, made people not want to.
Yes, but don't you feel like at some once again, if because I mean it's been from the point where he graduated. So you graduate Hogwarts at 17. He worked at Borgin and Burke's after graduating. He's apparently 77 now. Do you think that in 60 plus years, if there was a part of their shop where they were avoiding it because there was a notice me not charm on it or something, don't you think they would have found that a little bit suspicious?
Oh yeah.
Borgin and Burke they're the stereotypical dark old wizards, but they're intelligent. They
Mm-hmm.
know their stuff about dark artifacts. They would have eventually figured that out.
Yeah, they're the pawn shop people.
Yes. They're the ones that whenever in book 2, whenever Lucius was like, there's some unsavory things in the manor I have to leave with you. He goes there.
Yes. So they rule out each of those. Hogwarts was they ruled that out because um, Voldemort never got back in. So they feel that after he left, and they know that the diary was already one. So they're like, well, there wouldn't be two there, and he never got back in. Like he never got back into Hogwarts to
Yeah,
leave it there.
Dumbledore wouldn't hire him as a teacher.
Yes.
Rightly so.
And then Albania was because he was exiled there later in his life.
And
And
they knew that he had made most of his Horcruxes before.
right. And so now they're by a riverbank and they hear voices. And so they use the extendable ears and they're listening in, and they hear a language they don't understand because it sounds like gobbledygook, because it
Which
is
is the name of the
gobbledygook.
language.
It's, I like that because we always, the colloquialism or whatever. It's like, oh, that sounds like gobbledygook, and she actually took that as the name of the goblin language in her wizarding world. And so we've got two goblins there and a human at first. And so they recognize the voice as being Ted Tonks, who has fled. And the two goblins are Grip Hook and Gornuk. And then Dean Thomas has been kind of, I think, following along with Ted Tonks.
Yeah.
He shows up, and then Dirk, which I missed when Dirk came in. There was just the paragraph where it mentioned, oh, and Dirk did something. I was like, who is Dirk and where did he come from?
We see in we hear his name in the ministry that Runcorn had kind of made it so that and there was no wizarding heritage to be found in his family tree.
Okay.
So he kind of branded him as a muggle. So
Gotcha.
he has to go on the run. But no, important before this part of the chapter, we find out they had overheard that like Neville, Ginny, and Luna were still kind of trying to carry out Dumbledore's army at Hogwarts. Like they were still trying to do this, and they know that at one point they had tried to steal the Sword of Gryffindor out of Snape's office by this point.
Did they not learn that from overhearing
They
the conversation?
find out more, but they heard that they had tried to do this, like they're still kind of trying to do the resistance at Hogwarts with Snape in charge.
Yeah. Yeah, I think they really hear so they hear the Ted Tonks and Dean Thomas talking in with the goblins, and this is when they find out that Ginny tried to steal the Godric sword from Snape's office, along with Neville and Luna, and so they get punished by Snape by sending him to Hagrid to do things for Hagrid in the Forbidden Forest, which that should have told me that should really give some flags, like good flags vibes to the three here. Like Snape, like they know that Snape never really showed any affection or anything for Hagrid. Right?
Yes.
And so
and also they know that Snape, for whatever reason, really hates Neville.
yes. And so their punishment is to send them to Hagrid to do tasks for Hagrid in the Forbidden Forest. It seems off for what we know of Snape.
Yes, but even at this point of what we know of Snape, he is a very complicated character. I will never say that Snape is good, but he is very complicated.
Yes. Yeah. And we also go ahead.
So we hear that, but we see, and this is just what they've heard of what the punishment is. And we assume it's what the punishment was. We don't know. Maybe there was something else, but
And that was Phineas, by the way, that told them what the punishment was.
yes. And so they have, but we do know at this point that Ginny, Neville, and Luna are all at Hogwarts.
Mm-hmm.
They are there, and in theory, they are as safe as they can be.
Yes. But the goblins, we do learn from the goblins, one, that the sword in Snape's office was a fake.
Mm-hmm.
We also do learn that
that it's supposedly they locked it up in a vault in Gringotts somewhere, the fake sword, because that's where Snape wanted them to put it.
They locked the fake sword up?
Yes, they didn't tell Snape that it was a fake sword. They were just like, we're going to keep that bit of information to ourselves. and that was sort of the title for this chapter. Which was
The
the
Goblin's
Goblin's
Revenge.
Revenge.
Yes.
They're like, Snape's like, keep this is the sword of Gryffindor, keep it safe, and they're like, no, it's not.
Yeah.
But sure, we just won't tell you because we don't like that the Ministry is now reaching into Gringotts. Goblins have a very um tumultuous relationship with wizards. They will not have wizards be their masters. They will work with wizards. And as we see, like, we know that there are wizards that work at Gringotts as like curse breakers and help them, because goblin magic is different than wizard magic.
Yeah.
But that we, from Graphorn and Griphook, we sort of learned that the Ministry has sort of reached its all-reaching hand into Gringotts, and they're not happy about it.
No, and so these two left, but we find out here the sword can destroy Horcruxes. Goblin-made blades imbibe only that which strengthened them. Harry, that sword's impregnated with basilisk venom.
Mhm.
And Dumbledore didn't give it to me because he still needed it. He wanted to use it on the locket. And he must have realized they wouldn't let you have it if he put it in his will. So he made a copy and put a fake in the glass case. So yeah, so this is Harry and Hermione just like finishing each other's sentences as as they're talking about the
Which
sword.
Ron is not happy about.
No, and like, and
Ron's
he
not
left.
happy about anything at this point.
No, no. And so they start trying to figure out where he left the real sword. So because they want to get that to destroy the locket. And after all this, Ron, amongst other things, he's getting pissed off. He
Now it is
he
at this moment it is to be known that he is wearing the locket at this moment.
Yes, he is wearing a locket at this point. During this conversation, he tells Hermione that, he's like, "Oh, it's fine for you because your parents are off safe," and he's about to mention Harry's parents not being there, and Harry jumps in and goes, "And mine are dead." And it's like, and Ron's like, "Well, mine are going to be that way soon too." It's like, hey, Ron, what the fuck are you doing?
Yeah.
And so they fight, and Ron decides that he's done. Um and he's like, I thought you had a plan, and apparently you don't, and I'm just tired. And I want to go be with my family and help protect them. And Ron leaves.
Which, once again, you read this as a teenager, as a young adult, you're like, how could he do that? That's so horrible. But as an adult, you're like, I get it. like he
It's a
he
stressful thing.
it's a very stressful thing, and he has so much family that are all in danger because they are pro muggle, and Hermione is hoping that her parents are okay. She doesn't know either. She just sort of sent them off to Australia and is like, I hope no one finds you.
Yeah.
Harry, you would think at some point Harry might have the thought of, well, have they found like Uncle Vernon and Aunt Petunia? No, he doesn't care. And so I mean, yeah, Ron does at this point, Ron does have the most to lose personally. And as we've seen, he's very susceptible to the locket. So all of this is going to be amplified, because a lot of people think that Ron is very childish for how he reacts in this. And yes, but they're very valid concerns. And they're very, if you were in that situation, I mean, you have a wife and a child, would you not also be incredibly concerned about their safety in the same sort of situation?
Yes.
So
Yes, I
it's,
would.
as an adult, you see things a little bit differently than if you're reading it as a teenager.
Right. It's like, how could you leave your friends? All right. Um, we'll move on to chapter 16, but I'm gonna use the restroom real quick.
Okay.
Right. Right. So chapter 16, Godric's Hollow. This is where things start to really pick up for our adventurers. And
Yes.
although I will say the first part of this chapter is very boring because it's just Ron, uh, Harry thinking of Ron, watching Jenny on the Marauders map, and then them talking to Phineas.
Yes. And they do get a good bit of information out of Phineas
They do.
in their conversations, which a good bit of what he does tell them is important in its way.
Yeah, and I don't think so. Like, I know those portraits serve the headmaster of the school. Um, but yeah, Phineas himself isn't evil. And so it's like, it's a good, I think it's a good uh, mechanic in this book for them to get information. It's essentially listening to the radio for news.
Sort of, yes. And I will say, you will appreciate Phineas Black more once you've played more of Hogwarts Legacy, because he's kind of a terribly comic character in that game. Like, you're like, oh, he's kind of terrible, but he's also kind of funny.
Yeah.
And so I've played through it twice, and so I see these conversations with Phineas Black's portrait. I'm just like, yeah, that tracks. But they do find actually in this chapter from Phineas's portrait that Snape brought back a lot of those Umbridge rules, where you like, there's no outside organizations that are not approved. You can't be gathered with 3 or more people. Um, and so it's, oh, we do find out that Ginny did have another punishment, and that she was banned from going to Hogsmeade.
Yes.
So she, um, they're, but they do because of that, because Harry's able to look at the Marauders map and see Jenny's name. He's has the hope that she's safe, or at least, alive.
True. And yeah, so after that portion of the book, we get Hermione reading or she's constantly reading the Tales of Beetlebard, and she notices a symbol in it. And that symbol, we find we find that out at the end of the section that it's the symbol of the Deathly Hallows.
Yes. But at this point, Harry only knows it as Grindelwald's mark.
And that Xenophilius Lovegood was wearing that a pendant with that symbol on it at the wedding, Bill and Flora's wedding.
Yes.
Um,
And so this is sort of their only other lead
lead.
they have is,
Yes.
okay, maybe Xenophilius knows something.
But they don't seek him out first. They decide to go to Godric's Hollow. Like, Harry's stuck on Godric's Hollow, brings it up again because that's where Godric, well,
He
he
doesn't
doesn't
make that
realize
connection.
right now yet that Godric Gryffindor is from Godric's Hollow, but that's the most obvious thing. But he knows it as the place where his parents lived, Bathilda Bagshot is, and
Dumbledore lived.
Dumbledore lived. So he's like, this makes sense to go there. And so Hermione finally agrees to go there, thinking that, okay, the sword's there. And I really did laugh out loud at this. He says, because Hermione's like, no, Harry's like, what's there? And she says, "The sword, Harry. Dumbledore must have known you'd want to go back there." And I mean, Godric's Hollow is Godric Gryffindor's birthplace. And then Harry's response is, "Really? Gryffindor came from Godric's Hollow?" Like,
And so that's where we see, because like his quick thinking in the Ministry, and then you see now, and you're just like,
it,
Harry.
that sets up Hermione's classic question. God, did you even read Hogwarts: A History?
Yep.
Or a history of, this one is a history of magic, but it it yeah,
Yes.
it should have been Hogwarts: A History, but a history of magic will work anyway. Um,
But yes, because this is where we come up to that culmination of, we hear, because we don't hear this name too much in any of the other books. It pops up every now and then of Bathilda Bagshot, but it has been a very recurring name, this book. And so
yes.
it's now, let's go find Bathilda Bagshot.
And so then let's see, they go there hoping to speak to Bathilda. They go visit the graveyard.
And they
They
are
see,
polyjuiced as somebody else, because apparently Hermione just has an endless supply of polyjuice potion at this point.
yes, she does. She brewed a whole lot of it. You know, she was prepared. Um, she went through so she went through the entire game collecting um, potions and rockets for the rocket launcher, because they're powerful, but I can't use them here because I'm going to need them later. And she is one that at the end of the game, she goes, "Well, I have it all. I might as well start using it now, since I hadn't before." When it would have been, it would have been easier. Other missions would have been easier if they used these things, but she's like, "I'm gonna do it the hard way. I might need it later." And of
Yes.
course, this is now later. You know how that is in video games, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
But
I can
so
do it
they're
without this.
but yeah, so they get to Godric's Hollow, and they do point out that it's winter time now. So we now know uh we've had another sort of time jump. And they're kind of walking around, and they go to the cemetery where Hermione finds Kendra and Ariana Dumbledore's graves. And then she thinks she finds originally the Potter's graves, because she sees the P in Paravel, and they find it's a very worn grave, and so but she's certain she sees at the time what they're referring to as Grindelwald's mark on this grave,
Right.
on a grave that very much so predates Grindelwald. And then they find Harry's parents, and
So the grave of Ignotus,
yes,
which I've got a couple thoughts. I just kind of connected this. It kind of reminds me of Ignatius, who was like a scholar. Um, and then of course the symbol, and we haven't learned too much about the symbol, but we're learning more about it now, and that it seems that Grindelwald adopted it as his, right?
yes, but the
But
symbol
prior,
itself predates him.
it predates it. And that, going back to World War II, the swastika was adopted by the Nazi Party. And prior to the Nazi Party, it was used as a symbol of, I believe, fertilization.
It was a Buddhist symbol.
Yeah. And so, like, it's never going to be used for that ever again in a
You,
positive.
you say that because what they took the symbol, it was a very popular Buddhist symbol, and they rotated it because the Buddhist symbol is very square, like it's not tilted to be that diamond shape that the swastika was. Um, because I've definitely still seen, especially when I was living in Korea, Buddhist temples that still have the original symbol, and that was a bit of a shock until I learned what it was.
It's like, why are there Nazis here? Wait.
And then you look into it, you're like, no, that is a very prominent Buddhist symbol. But yeah, so they're realizing now that it's not just Grindelwald's mark. Something is going on with this symbol before Grindelwald even. So I think they're focusing on what they're doing Godric's Hollow, but I'm pretty sure the back of Hermione's mind, she's like, we probably are going to need to go see Xenophilius Lovegood at some point.
This thing keeps popping up. We need to know what this is.
Yeah. And then they do, Hermione realizes that we're here, we're putting down flowers at the symbol of, at the stones of Harry's parents that might look suspicious.
Probably. And so, and that was, yeah, Harry's parents' grave. And then I think the end of this, is that when they see a person watching them?
So yeah, so they see
Or is that at the beginning of the next chapter?
let's see.
So they
No, so they place it down. I think that they think that somebody's watching them, so they leave the cemetery.
yes, and they go back to towards the church.
They go back towards the church. That's when I think Hermione realizes it's Christmas Carol. She's like, I think it's Christmas Eve. And so we're finally getting sort of a date of what's happening, but they pass by. It seems like a house, but then as they approach it, it is the burned down house of the Potters. And so they're seeing the memorial to the house.
And that's in the next chapter, right? Chapter 17?
Let's see. Where is it?
Because the end of chapter 16 is after they laid the wreath at Harry's parents' grave, and then they walk towards the church.
Yes. So yeah, so now we're going to 17, and we're seeing another. They point out in the cemetery, they're like, oh, it's an abbot. They're probably related to Hannah Abbott, who's a fellow student of theirs at Hogwarts.
And Harry's like, who?
Which, he's a boy, but the abbots are another member of the Sacred 28. So, and we know that James Potter was a pureblood. So you can sort of now make the connection of, okay, so we're seeing like the Dumbledores, there's the Potters, there's abbots, there's a very long wizarding history with this village, and with very strong wizards there.
Yeah.
So, and we have to, with that, we can sort of assume, well, hey, this person who has this symbol on their grave was probably a pretty powerful person.
Yeah. And like you said, they do so they leave to find Bathilda's house, but they end up, before getting there, they end up finding the Potter house, which is still like in the state that it was 16 years ago. And when they approach, say that again?
As a memorial to Lily and James, like to Voldemort's downfall, they left it as it was.
Right. And as they approach and they mention here that, like, I think only wizards can, like, muggles can't see the house.
Yeah.
And so as they do approach, like a sign or a plaque pops up that gives like a memorial about the Potters in the house. And
well, because that was another thing, like right when they arrived in Godric Hall, this would have been in the last chapter, they sort of see, I mean, it appears that just about every town in England is going to have a war memorial. Bring us back to kind of the World War II stuff. But as they approach the war memorial, it changes, and they see that it's actually a statue, only being able to be seen by wizards, of Lily James and baby Harry. And Harry comments, he's like, it's so weird to see him as a statue and as a baby.
oh yeah, I forgot that. I thought I highlighted that. Now that you mention it, it's like that was a cool touch. It's like you do show up. They show up. It's like, oh, there's a war memorial, and as they approach, it changes.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, yeah. Nice
Yes.
touch.
Now they're heading back.
They
They're
see somebody
realizing that
watching
they're in a
them.
very vulnerable spot.
They're under the cloak, though.
But yes, but they're still fairly vulnerable. They're kind of out in the open in a place they don't know.
Yes.
And so they're making their way back towards the church, trying to figure out how they're going to figure out which one is Bathilda Bagshot's house.
But luckily for them, or unluckily, they see somebody watching them, and they're like, I think that person's watching us. And then she beckons them, and so like she could see through the cloak.
Which that should be a major red flag
Right. But I
because
mean, Bathilda Bagshot,
people aren't supposed to be able to see through the cloak.
but I mean, so Dumbledore, if you go back to book one, Dumbledore tells Harry at some point, like, I don't need, oh, I think he said, I don't need a cloak to keep people from seeing me. But Dumbledore totally knew where Harry was sometimes when he was under the cloak.
Harry was also like 11 and not that good at hiding himself.
But still, like,
And like Dumbledore had seen a thing or two and Dumbledore knew that he had given Harry the cloak.
yes, yes.
So I
Still,
mean,
Bathilda Bagshot, being as old as she is, and she wrote um, several books about. She didn't write a history, man. She wrote a Hogwarts a history.
Hogwarts of history.
Um, oh, sorry. I was thinking about book 4 whenever Hermione was talking about the house elves, and it's like it never mentions that in Hogwarts of history, or should I say a revised history of Hogwarts, because it leaves out all this stuff. Um, Jules and I are listening to the audiobooks, and we're on book 4, and so I got to send you the video. But Jules, um, when the Goblet of Fire spit out all the names, we were walking, and when we got back home, right when we walked in the door, Cedric Diggory's name had been called, and so she's like, "Okay, those are the 3 champions," and she took the AirPods out and told me to pause it, and I was like, "Aren't you wondering why Harry's not a champion?" She said, "Well, no, he's not old enough. He can't." So, like, it's like, okay, play. And I filmed her as it was playing, and got a good reaction whenever Harry's name came out. 'Cause she was just like, "Who is that? Wait, what?" I gotta send it to you. But anyway, just the Hogwarts of history, or as
Yeah.
Hermione says, a revised, a compromised history of Hogwarts. So anyway, Bathilda beckons them over.
Well, they don't know it's Bathilda yet. They ask her when they get to her. They assume
She
that
does
they're not
not,
sure.
and she doesn't speak. She just
She just
nods.
nods.
And so she beckons them to her house. Um, at which point, inside the house, Harry does see a picture of the thief that he saw in Gregorovitch's memory. He's
And
like,
realizes who it is.
did he realize who it was at this moment?
Well, he realizes that this is the same person he saw in the memory.
Okay.
He's like,
Yeah,
oh, this is an important picture.
yeah,
So he picks up the picture. And he's planning to take it with him. And then they're still trying to call after Bathilda and be like, Bathilda, and she's not responding. And it states that the house, like everything's overgrown outside the house, everything's really messy inside the house.
it smells.
It smells like they notice the smell first thing. It smells horrible. So
It smells like
they
somebody died in there.
And so they should have had red flags popping up every second. And so Bathilda somehow separates Harry and Hermione and gets Harry to follow her and gets Hermione to stay put. And then that's when he tries to Harry tries to help her because she's not able to control her limbs very well. And then
And he sees a ruby underneath the laundry, right?
Yes.
And so he's like, "Oh, that's the sword." And so he goes to grab it, and at which point Nagini comes out
Well,
of
at
her.
first he sort of hears something.
Once they're upstairs, she starts talking to him.
And Harry doesn't realize that her mouth's not moving.
Yeah.
And he's only able to hear him because he can speak parcel tongue.
Right.
So he keeps asking her, is do you have something for me? Did Dumbledore leave you something for me? Once again, not Bathilda. And so now he's starting to realize, okay, something's off. He's realizing that he's not seeing her lips move when he's talking, and that he's hearing it in his head.
And his scar is hurting.
Yes.
And
So
the Horcrux is twitching.
yes, so which that could be maybe Voldemort's approaching. Maybe it is true that Nagini is also Horcrux. Maybe the Horcruxes are responding to each other. But undoubtedly he knows everything is wrong. They need to get out of there right now.
You see,
snake is emerging from Bathilda.
Whenever I was reading it, and like I said, I haven't read this book since it came out. And so I forgot a lot of what happened. And I haven't watched the movies since they came out either. The last two movies I have not rewatched since they first came out. I saw them in the theater. So in this case, whenever the locket was reacting, I thought it was because of the sword being close to it. And so, then whenever here, I was like, I got to this point where so the locket was moving. So his scar was hurting. The locket was moving. And then he felt a leap of joy and spoke in a high, cold voice, hold him. I was like, I thought Harry felt a leap of joy and spoke in a high, cold voice, hold him.
Nope.
I was like, what?
Voldemort
Yeah.
was telling that. Was communicating with Nagini.
Yes.
So Harry, at this point, also, he realizes that it's the snake. He drops his wand. And he tries to pick it up and he manages to get it, but it says the room is full of snake. So he's running, he gets to Hermione, says Hermione, he realizes that Voldemort's on the way. So he's getting to Hermione. And then the snake is just attacking them, trying to keep them there. Hermione, she doesn't care about killing, but the snake's distinctly not trying to kill Harry. It's just trying to hold him there. But so the snake is just attacking and attacking, and Hermione is finally able to blast it away enough that they're able to make their escape.
Out the window.
Out the window. Hey, window, door, anything is an escape when there's a giant snake coming at you. So she's able to get away. And he's saying
Harry
that Harry feels his scar bursting open. And it's weird that at the same time he's also registering through Voldemort's mind, the bells ringing in Christmas Day. So the random little things. But so now he's kind of seeing what happened through Voldemort's view. He sees himself and Hermione eject out of the window from Voldemort's point of view as Voldemort arrives as they escape. And so you sort of get the feeling now that Harry was in that much pain and the locket was reacting so much because Voldemort was very close.
Yeah. And because of that pain, he passes out.
Yes.
And starts to think about he dreams of Voldemort killing his parents. So like, I mean, first it was just the night of Halloween, and there was like kids and costumes and things like that. And it quickly moved into, oh, Voldemort showed up and killed his dad immediately, that his mom begged not to, and then he tried to kill Harry.
Yes.
So
And
gets
it is a very important thing because this is the first time that Harry is seeing fully what happened that night. But also Voldemort tries like 2 or 3 times to get Lily to stand aside. He's not aiming to kill Lily. Which is it's an important thing to have in your mind, of that he tries to tell Lily to stand aside, thinking that any good mother is going to stand aside and let her child get murdered. But that's a whole issue with Voldemort and him being conceived under love potions and all kinds of crazy stuff. And also his mother was apparently just like a terrible human. Not excusing Voldemort's behavior, but all still facts.
right.
But so that is important that he tries to get Lily to stand aside. This is the first time Harry's been told what happens, but he's actually seeing it from Voldemort's point of view now. He's seeing the death of his parents for the first time, which that's gonna re-traumatize anybody.
Yeah. And so he wakes up and he's still seeing these visions of Voldemort currently. And like Voldemort is now outside outside the window, and he picks up the smashed photograph and sees that it's the picture of the thief. So now Voldemort
kind of
is
got a lead on
reminded of it
too.
as well.
Mhm.
So we'll see. Tells Hermione that he dropped his wand.
And then Hermione has to break the news to him that she may have blown up his wand.
Yeah.
Which, when you think about it, Harry, they spend a lot of this book emphasizing the wands and the connection that the wands, Harry and Voldemort's wand, have. So Harry is now, he gets very angry at Hermione that she blew up his wand, because Harry felt that that was his main protection against Voldemort, was his wand.
Yeah.
So he's angry. He feels vulnerable. He just survived a giant snake attack. It's a bad day for Harry Potter.
Oh, I thought you were continuing on with
No, it's a bad day for Harry Potter at this point. But now at this point, which is we see at this point as it's just Harry and Hermione, because before, when it was the 3 of them, they were adamant that the locket not be left unattended, the locket be on one of them at all times. We're now seeing that they're realizing that they both need to take breaks from the locket, so they'll like put it somewhere in the tent where they can see it and keep an eye on it, but they're not wearing it all the time anymore.
Yeah. And it's here Hermione brings up the fact that Lupin was like, y'all are going to face some magics y'all have never seen before. And
Like a snake reanimating a corpse.
Yeah,
That's a new one.
and a snake coming out of the neck, and Yeah, that's some weird stuff there. And so now, I mean, at the end, he thinks about Ollivander, Grigorovich, um, and then the fact that both of those wand makers are gone now, or
or imprisoned,
or
or
in prison.
they're
It's like, how
they
am I
know
going to get another wand?
they know Grigorovich is gone. They Harry saw Grigorovich's death. They don't know about Ollivander yet.
Yeah, he knows that the last known whereabouts of Ollivander were in Voldemort's imprisonment.
Yes.
And so he's worried about where he's going to get another wand. Which will bring us to the life and lies of Albus Dumbledore.
Chapter 18.
Um, here, like, here, sorry, Harry is having a pity party for himself about his wand, about everything that's going on. And then Hermione's like, hey, let's look at this book. Like, I saw a copy of The Life and Lies of Albus Dumbledore in Batilda's house and I took it. Let's look through it.
And at this point, before Hermione points that out, Harry is getting very, very angry with Dumbledore, as he rightly should. Dumbledore is terrible.
I remember you telling me this
Yeah.
at the St. Patty's Day parade, and I've been thinking about your comment on that and why you think he's terrible since you mentioned it. So is this where you tell me everything?
No, I'll start telling you some of it, but in a way, you know some of it, in that Dumbledore had no problem sending actual teenagers, like 14, 15, 16-year-old teenagers, to do his work for him, to stand up and fight these full grown, know all of the magic that these students do not know, Death Eaters in the Department of Mysteries. And Dumbledore is fully aware that this kind of stuff is happening. And this is not the first time that he has convinced very, very young people to sort of join an army for him. Because when you think about it, the original Order of the Phoenix for the First Wizarding War, most of those people who were in there, Remus, Sirius, Lily, James, the Longbottoms, a lot of them were fresh out of Hogwarts. They were like 17, 18 years old.
Yeah.
When they're joining the Order of the Phoenix. And granted, Molly and Arthur were a little bit older. We do know that they are a little bit older than everybody else. But a lot of these people were like just fresh out of Hogwarts, 18 years old. This was before they even had Harry, and they have Harry at 20. Lily and James do. So this is the second time Dumbledore has allowed a child army to be raised in his name. Dumbledore's not a good guy.
No.
Dumbledore, like Snape, is a very complicated character. And we do see in this chapter sort of where some of those complexities come from in his history, and we find out more in the book. But the fact that it's another one of those things, you see it as you get older, you read it again and you're like, this is a child army. Dumbledore's raising a child army. What? And this is allowed? And he did this before? And everyone is still, oh, Albus Dumbledore is the greatest wizard. He's just the best person. I'm like, no.
He is very charismatic.
He is very charismatic. And we do sort of see in this in this chapter his history of how he became kind of charismatic. And we do find out a lot about his history in this chapter, including the strained relationship with his brother Aberforth. And we find out more about Ariana's death and his friendship with Grindelwald.
Yeah, go ahead and talk about that. The what we learn about Dumbledore from them reading this chapter of the Life and Lies of Albus Dumbledore. And that chapter was titled "The Greater Good," right?
Yes. So we find out a lot. We do find out that he has a very strained relationship with his brother over the death of his sister. We are able to deduce that Aberforth blames Albus for Ariana's death, whether regardless of if she was a squib or not. And we do get hints in the previous chapters that the two brothers did love their sister, like at least when they were kids.
Yeah.
So, and we know Aberforth is years younger than him, but that at that point they were as friendly as brothers could be. They were in each other's lives. We hear that in one of the first chapters with Doge talking about his obituary for Albus Dumbledore, in that they were years apart and they didn't have too many similar interests, but they were still friends. They were around each other. They enjoyed each other's company. Now it seems something terrible has happened, and Aberforth wants nothing to do with Albus as he's come back for Ariana's funeral. And this is after he came back, because he came back supposedly to care for his family. He came back from traveling, and then Ariana winds up dead. And if I remember correctly, we do find out a little bit more of what happened to Ariana later in the book. But at this point, we know Aberforth is on the outs with Albus. Ariana's dead. Both of his parents are dead. And Aberforth sort of goes on his own. Because Percival dies. And, well, Percival may not be dead, but he's in Azkaban. He's as good as dead. And Kendra's dead. Ariana's dead. Then it's in Godric's Hollow that Dumbledore meets Grindelwald. They're the same age. They start forming a deep friendship, and Grindelwald had been expelled from Durmstrang because he was a little too dark for the School of Dark Arts. And then we find out that Grindelwald was also Bathilda Bagshot's like great nephew or something, meaning Bathilda Bagshot really old, like really old. And because if she has a great nephew that is Dumbledore's age, and Dumbledore is supposedly 120, and she was still alive and kicking as of a couple weeks ago at this point, she's
yeah, I think it mentioned something about her age being like 150 or 160.
Yeah, she's old, but it is sort of canon that while wizards are not immortal, they do have a longer lifespan than muggles. And he strikes up this friendship with Grindelwald. Grindelwald has these very anti-muggle views. And we don't know if Dumbledore necessarily had them before or not, but he does express some anti-muggle sentiment. Not so much that he hates muggles, but that he finds them inferior to wizards. And he finds them weaker, and that wizards should be in charge for their own protection. So not the same level of hate that we see coming from Grindelwald, who's like, no, they should all just kind of be slaves and die. And eventually we find out that, of course, that something happens, they go on the outs. Dumbledore renounces his views. They have this epic battle where Dumbledore defeats Grindelwald, and he winds up in the prison of Grindelwald's own design.
What was the name of that prison again?
Oh geez, they say it.
Yeah, they do. God.
But I can't remember off the top of my head. But the Grindelwald had built a prison to put the people that opposed him into it, and then Dumbledore defeats him, and he winds up in that very same prison.
That was kind of very interesting.
Yes. And it is sort of showing through this, you're sort of realizing that Bathilda Bagshot may not have been entirely in her right mind while she was speaking to Rita Skeeter.
Well, one, the sorry, I just found it. The Nermengard is the name of the
Okay.
prison, and two, Bathilda was, Rita. If I read it correctly, she said on one subject, however, Bathilda is well worth the effort I put into procuring Veritas serum, for she and she alone knows the full story of the best kept secret of Albus Dumbledore's life. She admitted right there to me that she gave Veritas serum to Bathilda. So yeah, she's not in her right mind. She's
But no,
being
because
forced to tell the truth as she knows it.
yes, but also we sort of see, because I don't know if it's later in this chapter, but we see a letter from Rita to Bathilda. Sort of, it may have been like signed into the book or something, but it gave the thought of Bathilda may not have been fully in her right mind when Rita found her, and that's why she was more susceptible. Like Rita was able to pull things out that Bathilda years before may have fought against telling her. Even with Veritas Serum, you can kind of, if you're going to tell something, you're going to tell the truth, but you can also choose to just not respond.
Yeah,
and she's responding, so she's not. I don't think she's fully there at this point.
Yeah, I don't think so either. It's almost like amnesia or
Dementia,
Alzheimer's or dementia.
Yeah,
because the letter was in the book. There was a little note sticking out the top of it, and it said, "Dear Batty, thanks for your help. Here's a copy of the book. Hope you like it. You said everything, even if you don't remember it."
Yeah.
So it was either a memory charm or some other muggle disorder disease that was taking effect.
Or I'm sure they have a wizard equivalent of it, but because that's what they say. I mean, when you're looking at dementia and Alzheimer's, the farther away memories are the ones that stick the longest. So she was able to get Dumbledore's youth out of Bathilda Bagshot because that was a far enough memory that it hadn't been corrupted. But because she might not remember that she even spoke to Rita if she did have some sort of illness like that, because that would have been short-term memory. That would have been gone.
Right.
So Bathilda Bagshot is sort of unwillingly and unknowingly giving up this information, which is a shame because earlier at the wedding, F.A.S. Doge and Aunt Muriel and everyone's just like, oh, Bathilda Bagshot talked. She finally revealed all of their secrets, like sort of bad mouthing her and being like, oh, she's no longer trustworthy. Well, she's a little cuckoo, and well, now she's dead. So
let me ask you this.
Yeah.
Do you think that this revelation about Dumbledore serves to convince wizards, like the purpose of this being in the book? Does it serve to convince wizards that there is no good wizard and that wizard supremacy is natural? Because like if Dumbledore, who is to most people in Britain and Hogwarts for sure, is supposed to be a beacon of good and everything that's right in the wizarding world, and this book comes out that early in his life he said and did these things, that even the best of the wizards think that wizards should rule supreme.
So I think it serves multiple purposes. I think in a way it's meant to amplify Harry's frustration with Dumbledore. Like it's meant to kind of drive to the reader that the same thing that Harry is feeling, like, I didn't know Dumbledore at all. Why did he leave me all these missions and no instructions? Why did he put this in my hands knowing that he was going to die? Like, why didn't he tell me more? It's meant to sort of fuel the reader's frustration with Dumbledore as Harry is becoming increasingly more angry. But also, in a way, I think because this did come out in 2007, this is cancel culture before cancel culture, which is ironic because
Oh
again,
yeah.
but it is discrediting all of the good that Albus Dumbledore may have done later in his life because of his views as a 17-year-old, which, as we've established, they're still children. I don't care who says a 17-year-old is an adult. No, that is a child. They don't know their butt from a hole in the ground. Um, but it does show that so they do in the chapter. It shows that they Aberforth and Albus get into an actual fist fight on the side of Ariana's coffin at her funeral. And I do believe that it shows that Grindelwald was at Ariana Dumbledore's funeral, which just kind of cements how deep this friendship was between the two of them.
Yeah.
They were very but shortly after this they have their falling out and Grindelwald leaves. And then he goes on his, destruction tour, and Albus doesn't fight him for about, they say about 5 years. He just kind of leaves Grindelwald alone until eventually he has to step in and take him down. And then of course there's all the stuff that the author at one point tried to reveal to us that everyone was just like, why did you tell us that? We did not need to know any of that information. It doesn't change the story. I don't understand it. But as we see it in the story now, Harry's realizing who Grindelwald was, that Albus and Grindelwald were great friends, and that apparently Dumbledore has a history of like collecting really dark wizards. Because he finds Grindelwald, he finds Voldemort, like, and he like nurtures these people. And so I think Harry might almost in a way be like, am I supposed to be dark? Like, is this a trend? But Hermione is trying. So you see when they finish the chapter, Harry he's angry. He slams the book closed. He's trying to get away from it. He doesn't really want to talk to Hermione. He wants to sort of process it. And Hermione's trying to be like, look, Rita she prints so many lies, like you can't trust it. She's trying to backtrack. Hermione is still firmly on the go Dumbledore team. Will allow her that mistake. She is a child. But Harry is very rightly becoming very, very angry.
Yeah. Which brings us to the Silver Doe.
Yes.
So Hermione so first of all, they have one wand between the two of them. And whoever's on watch, like Harry says, whoever's on watch should have the wand. Hermione's sleeping. Harry's on watch, sees a Silver Doe. Stupidly follows the Silver Doe, leaving Hermione unprotected.
Which, remember, they are kids. He has a stag because it was his father's Patronus, or his father's animagus form. Some part of him is like, oh, my mom's was a doe. Because people had told him that his mom's Patronus was a doe. So he's a kid, and he's angry, and he's frustrated, and he sees something that reminds him of his mom.
Yeah, so he follows it
to a lake,
frozen lake, and sees the sword Excalibur at the bottom of the lake with no woman holding it aloft from her bosom. Um, so
We
sees,
do get some King Arthur kind of imagery with this one. Yeah.
yes, yes. Uh, so Gryffindor sword at the bottom of the lake. How he sees that, I met. So first of all, I was like, "What time of day is it?" I think it was a night.
It's the middle of the night, yeah.
It's the middle of the night, but also anytime they're camping, anytime they're doing anything in this book, I just because it's so dark, the like the theme is so dark. Um, I think everything's at night. So, like, how do you see at the bottom of frozen lake? Have you ever tried to look through frozen ice?
I have, and yes,
Frozen ice.
something must have alerted him that something was down there. Because unless it's like, which I mean, he does seem to break it. Well, he uses a spell, but I mean, unless it's like an inch of ice or less, it's very difficult to see through. Now, a very thin layer of ice, yeah, you can see through it.
Yeah.
But the water also has to be clear, which we
Yes.
don't know this. But it also, because when he eventually breaks through the ice and gets in, you find out it's not a very deep lake. Like it wasn't placed super deep down because he's able to sort of feel for it with his feet while his head's above water.
Yeah.
Because he's
It's
like,
not very smart. Let me feel for a sharp blade with my feet at the bottom of a lake.
he's 17.
This is
But
not the excuse for everything, Emily.
I mean, for a lot of their stupidity, it kind of is. They're very young. They're not old enough to have a gut to listen to yet. Um, and so, but from that, we do gauge that it's Harry is also. It says that 6 feet is a huge dramatic difference for Harry. So we're assuming Harry's probably somewhere around like 5'6", 5'7". So, and his head's completely above water. So we're assuming this lake's only about 5 feet deep, or at least the part where the sword is. It's
Yeah,
not
I
big.
mean, it's at the edge. Most lakes, there's not a drop off.
Yeah, so it's not super far down, but it is in the middle of winter, unless we've time jumped again and they haven't told us. And he's cracking the ice on it. So, and he of course did not tell Hermione he was going on this quest. He is now in a frozen lake, going to dive down and go for a sword. He's not showing great critical thinking skills happening right now.
No, and this reminds me. Wife and I have been watching this show on Apple Plus called Monarch: Legacy of Monsters, and it's connected to the Godzilla and King Kong movies that have been coming out since like 2007 or something like that. Um, and so in one of the episodes, they end up in Alaska, and there's three, no four. There's four people, and they're like, oh, we're going this way, and they start going this way, and one of them's like, nothing's over here. We've been traveling, and there's nothing over here, um, and it's getting dark, and he's like, back there, I saw something. Well, we need to go back this way, and three of them were like, no, we're going this way, and the one guy was like, all right, well, I'm going back this way, and it was started snowing. It's getting dark. He's never been to Alaska. He only has a backpack and a jacket and whatever, and somehow he survives. I'm like, no. Also, you're just an idiot. Like,
As a person who just got back from Alaska in the summer, that would not happen because it was like 40, 50 degrees in the summer there. He unless that man had negative 30-degree gear on, he should have died.
yes, yes. So, like it. This is the level of stupidity that Harry is doing right now.
Yes. And this is not Harry's wisest decision. But he jumps into this lake. He starts diving down, trying to get the sword. And the Horcrux, realizing, oh, he's going for something that can destroy me, starts strangling him. Because that's what Horcruxes do, apparently.
Yeah.
And Harry didn't have the forethought to take it off.
But luckily he's rescued
By Ron.
by Ron.
Most people in the series think that Ron is kind of the least intelligent person of the trio. And even Ron's like, why didn't you take it off before you jumped into this lake?
I find this hilarious, the intelligence thing. So if you think about, when you think about chess players, you typically think of a very intelligent person that's strategic, right?
Yeah.
Ron is the chess player. Hermione, on the other hand, doesn't understand. Like, Ron has tried to explain the rules of wizard chess to her so many times, and she just doesn't get it, which is just hilarious. So, like, that whole trope and stereotype does not fit in here.
Yeah.
But Ron pulls him out of the lake.
And the sword. He gets both.
Yes. He gets both. Ron. So I wrote here the dough is not Ron's. I think
the dough is not Ron's. We learn who the dough belongs to later.
Yes, but Harry. So when Ron showed up, Harry was like, "Was the dough yours?" And he's like, "No, I thought it was yours." He's like, "No, I think Ron said, I know, I thought it was yours." And then Harry's like, "No, mine's a stag."
And he's like, right, the antlers and stuff.
Yes. So now, like, for the readers and Harry and Ron, they're like, well, who the hell did that Patronus belong to?
Yeah. And we will eventually find that out, but
yes.
At this point, they're just kind of like, oh, somebody's trying to help us.
And now we've got Gryffindor's sword and the locket, and we need to destroy it. And Harry just had some divine feeling that Ron should be the one to destroy it.
He also finally gets this divine feeling that, oh, I need to use parcel tongue to open this locket that's connected to Slytherin. There's a lot of divine intervention right this second.
Well, I mean, he just pulled Excalibur from the lake. So
I don't think
technically Ron.
I don't think that the sword of Gryffindor can suddenly give you all the answers that you're seeking.
Technically Ron is like, Arthur.
But he somehow is like, oh, they've been trying, because remember, they've been trying to open this Horcrux for a while. And suddenly, as they have the sword, Harry's like, oh, I need to use parcel tongue to open it. And then decides that Ron needs to be the one to kill it. And
to be fair, Harry had just previously realized that, or remembered that parcel tongue was something he understood with his encounter with Nagini at Batilda's house.
Yes, but I'm also wondering, you've known at this point for like, I mean, you find this out before you go to Hogwarts that you can talk to snakes. How is that something you're forgetting? That you have this very rare ability that links you to Salazar Slytherin, that you are a parcel tongue and can speak to snakes. How are you forgetting that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
And that's another thing of Harry is very scatterbrained right now. But they set it up. I think they put the locket on a rock, and he's like, okay, Ron, just immediately go stab it. Like, don't let it get to you.
And it starts taunting Ron and telling him that he was the least loved and that Hermione actually loves Harry.
Starts playing out all of his deepest
fears,
insecurities. Almost like a really, really devious boggart.
Yeah.
And eventually Ron is able to fight through that and destroys the Horcrux.
And once they do destroy it, they go back to the tent to find Hermione.
And they have to like kind of find their way. They don't know where they are. They have to find their way back to the tent.
Although it does state that even though Harry felt like he ran for a long time, returning to the tent didn't seem to take as long.
Well, yeah. But now he has Ron with him now. They approach the tent. Hermione was freaking out because Harry was not there. He had her wand. She was completely defenseless.
And instead of running up and hugging Ron, she runs up to him and starts hitting him.
I mean, I would have done the same thing. I can't disagree with her on that one. And so she's not extremely happy that Ron's back. I mean, you probably deep inside she's happy that he's back, but right now she feels very betrayed, and very upset. And so they get back. Hermione's sort of, yeah, Harry tries to be like, Hermione, he just saved my life, and she's like, I don't care. I do
Shut
not
up,
care.
Harry.
Pretty
You're
much.
not part of this.
And then we find out that Ron, once he was no longer under the influence of the locket, wanted to come back, but he was immediately found by Snatchers, and escaped them. And by the time he tried to go back, they had left. So he winds up at
He took an extra wand with him too.
yeah. So Harry now has a wand to use, and we find out that Ron was at Bill and Fleur's cottage.
Yeah.
For most of this, and
The
realized why he was left the Deluminator.
Yeah, it helped him get back.
Yes.
So
Dumbledore obviously realized that Ron would be the one most likely to lose his way on this journey, and that's why he left him the Deluminator.
So I forgot the word I was going to use. Yeah, it was so happy. No. Cliche. Here's a lighter because you're the one that loses it away, or rather, an anti-lighter.
Yeah, yeah. We find out that that's what happened. And then is it? Okay, I think. Yeah, no, it's the next chapter we find out the next one.
It was funny that Harry kept he casted a shield charm on himself to buffer Hermione and Ron.
Yep. But pretty much we get them back, and they tell Hermione that they did destroy the Horcrux, and she's pretty much just like, well, good, and puts it in her bag and moves on. She's like, I'm not dealing with y'all right now.
Yeah.
And so that really brings us to chapter 20.
Xenophilius Lovegood. So I thought it was funny at the beginning here, just in general, is that Harry had not expected Hermione's anger to abate overnight, and was therefore unsurprised that she communicated mainly by dirty looks and pointed silences in the next morning. So, question: why not put taboos on everything like Death Eater and Horcrux? Were any of those other commonly used terms that would relate to Voldemort?
Because you'd be pulled into Voldemort doesn't at this point doesn't expect that they know about the Horcruxes. It's once they destroy this one that Voldemort kind of gets the heads up that they know. And I mean, the Death Eaters call themselves Death Eaters. So that could send off alerts to them. Then, but they only refer to Voldemort as the Dark Lord. So the only people who would be referring to him as Voldemort versus he who must not be named or the Dark Lord or would be Order of the Phoenix. And it's not so much, I think with this taboo, they're not necessarily trying to catch Harry, Ron, and Hermione. It's more so they're trying to round up any opposing him. I mean, the first time, obviously, they find out that that's how they tracked him in Tottenham Court Road. It's because they said the name and the taboo was able to trace where they were. So luckily, even when Ron was with them and he was very irritable and he was insistent that they not use his name, he was saving them a lot. He didn't know it, but he was saving their butts a lot by having them not be found.
Yeah, I just think because he also knows that people say he who must not be named. So why not put the taboo on that as well?
Because then he's getting called to every home in Britain. He knows people are going to be discussing it themselves or with their families. He knows that people know that he's back. He's
But
not trying
people
to hide
still
this at
say
this point.
Voldemort. Like his followers say Voldemort. So
No, his followers call him the Dark Lord. His followers don't use his name. The only people who use his name, or unless they're addressing, because I mean, even still, typically when you see them addressing him, they don't call him Lord Voldemort. They just say my lord. Like the only people you really see calling him Voldemort are Order of the Phoenix members. And they even said that they put the taboo on to be able to trace members of the Order of the Phoenix and capture them.
Okay. I'll concede.
But because I mean, yeah, some of them they would be getting calls everywhere, or they'd be getting blips everywhere, and they wouldn't be able to trace what was the real stuff.
No.
Also, plot hole.
Plot holes and plot armor. There we go. So
Yeah, so they're
Ron catches Harry up on the outside world.
yes.
Tells him how
He
the
was able
Deluminator
to
works.
steal daily profits every now and then.
Yeah. And this is where we learn that so this chapter is where we learn that he didn't end up at the Burrow. Like Harry thought he spent Christmas at the Burrow because Ron says they see the Burrow as they're going to Zeno's house. And I think this is cutting a little bit ahead of where I was going to say. But anyway, on the way to the Zeno's house, they see the Burrow, and Ron says it feels weird passing by without going and visiting. And Harry's like, I thought you just spent Christmas there. He goes, no, I wouldn't. Why would I do that? I went to Bill and Floors. And even though Bill wasn't happy that I left you, he still wouldn't, spill the beans.
Yeah.
And so they do discuss the Doe Patronus.
Yes, they're trying to figure out who had the Doe Patronus, and they remember that Dumbledore's was a phoenix, so it wasn't Dumbledore, and
Kingsley's was a lynx.
Kingsley's was a lynx. And isn't it at this? I feel like we find out.
They talk about Tonks. They talk about the fact that
That Lupin's did change, or Tonks's did change when she married
Tonks's did
Lupin.
change. So they're like, oh, well, it can change. So because Tonks's did change.
Yes, and I don't know. I feel like we found this out. I don't know if it was this chapter one before, but we do find out that now Kingsley is on the run. He was something happened and he was seen protecting the wrong people, and so he's now on the run.
Okay, yeah, it was either this one or the other one. I think I
think Ron tells him, "Oh, Kingsley's on the run." Like that's one of the things he finds out. Oh, he finds it out from the radio.
Oh yes. This when he was talking about the Deluminator and like when he turned or he was listening to the radio and he flipped the deluminator on, in which he heard Ron and Harry and Hermione.
Yes.
Okay.
But yeah,
And
we
that's
do
when he
find out
started finding him.
that Kingsley is now on the run, which is also interesting because Kingsley is also a pureblood, which is not super widely known in the books, but Kingsley is a pureblood. I'm pretty sure he's like descended from one of the Sacred 28 families.
Okay. But while they're talking about that, Hermione interrupts them because um, she was looking over the book, the Life and Lies, and sees that Dumbledore's signature, like that's the symbol, the Deathly Hallows symbol, is in Dumbledore's signature. And then this is when she's like, "We need to visit Xenophilius."
Yes.
And so they go to find Zeno's house. On the way, they pass by the burrow, which that conversation happens. Um, they go inside. Zeno's like, you know, he's like, "What are y'all? Why are y'all here?" Uh,
Yes, and he looks very he looks
Scared.
very scared, and he also looks very disheveled.
He's
Um,
very reluctant to help them.
yes, and they thought, and remember, they think that Luna is safe home from Hogwarts. There's no sign of Luna, and they are, and he's just like, oh, she's out fishing or whatever. And then he's very reluctant to help him. He doesn't want to let him inside, but eventually he concedes, and he's like, just get in here quickly, almost as if like before someone sees you type of
Right.
situation.
And they're talking to him, and I thought, um, oh, by the way, um, it wasn't in the Life and Lies of Dumbledore. It was in the Tales of Beetle Bard that she saw the
The symbol.
A in Albus had been replaced by the Deathly Hallows symbol. But they're inside the house and um, they see well, first of all, Ron's like, that's got to be Luna's house. Who else would live in a place that like that? It looks like a giant rook. And Hermione says, it looks nothing like a bird. And Ron's like, I was talking about a chess rook or a castle to you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can you be more condescending, Ron, to your girlfriend? That'd be a
They're not
castle
dating
to you.
yet.
And then inside while they're talking, Hermione sees something on the wall, and she's like,
The rumpet horn.
yeah, she's like, Mr. Lovegood, what's that? And he's like, oh, it's the horn of a crumple horned snorkack. She's like, no, it isn't. Um, it's an rumpet horn. It's just a class B tradable material, and it's extraordinary dangerous. And we find out that he had just gotten it like a couple weeks ago. Like somebody gifted it to him, or
Yeah.
he bought it. He bought it from a delightful young wizard who knew of his interest. So like,
It calls back to book one with the trader of Fluffy in the pub.
yes.
Who is this wizard who just always seems to know when people want strange creatures?
And so they are asking, where Luna is, and he says she's out fishing by the lake. And he leaves them in the house and goes to fetch her. He comes back without her, which like bring her back. But she's going to join them, and she's bringing back fish, plimpies. She's going to make fish soup for them to eat. And then um, she asks about the symbol, and that's when Xenophilius then informs them that it's the symbol of the Deathly Hallows.
Yep, and he sort of his demeanor sort of changes when they ask him about that. He goes from like kind of frantic and panicky, and he sort of focuses in when they're like, what was that symbol you were wearing at the wedding? And he's like, oh, that's the symbol of the Deathly Hallows. Like that question kind of brings him back. And so we get that. And
Good cliffhanger.
Yeah, it's a big cliffhanger.
Because it's like, this is the first time we ever hear of this thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the name of the book, The Deathly Hallows.
It said the thing.
Yes. All right. So that was a great conversation.
Yep.
Looking forward to continuing this conversation. Next week's section will be picking up chapters 21 and going through 30. I'm not going to read the name of that chapter out because, yeah, if you don't want to know, don't read that chapter title until you get to it. So we will read chapters 21 through 30 and discuss those next week. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share, do all those things. It helps us out. And yeah, I am going to go enjoy this Father's Day weekend. I know you said your family is doing one
next weekend. It didn't
weekend.
work out for us all this weekend, but we'll meet up next weekend. But Alex and I have some stuff to get done around the house, so it'll be a good, productive weekend for us at least.
Yes, make him do some extra work for me.
I'll tell him you said that.
All right. So yep, like, follow, share, visit our sponsor's website, www.mudcatwhiskers.com, and we will see y'all next week.
Bye.